Welcome to another episode of DNA of Games, the podcast that highlights disabled and neurodiverse people in the games industry. This week is an extra long special one with the content creator and accessibility consultant known as SightlessKombat. So let's jump straight into it. Welcome again to another episode of DNA of Games, and joining me this week is somebody who I have met a little while ago now and has been following his journey of into games and accessibility and streaming and all the other things that he does in life quite closely, because I do appreciate the work that he puts in for people in the community, and it makes me excited to announce that this week's guest is SightlessKombat.
Hello! You are far too kind in your intro. That is amazing of you. Thank you so much for having me here. Since I saw your podcast come up, I was curious about being a guest on it to provide my insight and all of that into my journey and my experiences as a gamer without sight. Because I have no sight whatsoever, and even up to yesterday and today, as of the time of recording, I've had discussions with people who are like, "So you can't see much, right? You're partially blind," and I'm like, "No, I have no sight at all." So that's why I always say I am a gamer without sight. I'm SightlessKombat. I am the Accessible Gaming and Immersive Technologies Research Officer at the RNIB, at RNIB, Royal National Institute of Blind People in the UK, and that's as of relatively recently, as of the time of recording. But I also, for the past several years, have been doing accessibility reviews. I've been streaming on Mixer and then on Twitch. I have been putting together other content for my website, so clarifying, what equipment I use, all of that, and consulting with studios, so Guerrilla Games, the Coalition, all sorts of places. Done presentations all around the world, the Game Accessibility Conference, in both the US and in sort of the EU as well, the EU edition. I did presentations in Slovakia, in the Netherlands for Guerrilla, and all sorts of fun things over the years, which I'm probably forgetting numerous elements of. Rare, I've done work with as well. Fantastic team working on Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves will likely crop up again later in conversation. But the key thing to be aware of is that I am a gamer without sight. And when I say that, I mean I have absolutely no sight whatsoever. I use the term as legal blindness, which is often just shortened to being blind, can and often does include usable and or residual vision, which I've never had. So if ever you ask me, how much can you see, you will get the same answer. Nothing.
Yeah, I guess that, I'm going to make a little joke saying until you've not done much. But yeah, I think your disability is probably the most interesting to a lot of people, because I think they just can't comprehend that there is gamers without sight.
The amount of people, the amount of people who are like, how do you even? I say I play video games, I have no sight. They're like, no. I've had people say to me over the years, one of the best responses I ever got to that was back when I was playing Killer Instinct a heck of a lot, back in 2015 or so, and I was talking about my online matches and suggesting accessibility stuff, sort of implementations that could be acted on to make the game more playable. And I suggested, why don't you put a KV meter, so it's the little gauge at the side of your screen that lets you know how far your combo is from dropping, or automatically ending itself, I guess, via just blowing out. As the turn of phrase goes. And the response I got to that thread was fantastic. I got a great community response in the positive side of it. And then I had a few, one or two people who were like, no, this doesn't need to happen. Why? And one of the best responses I got was a person who came in and said, I work with blind people. They don't play video games. It's not the done thing. I was like, you said, what? It's not the done thing. I was like, oh, okay. And I worked with that as civilly as I could, and the community were actually great about it as well. They sort of promptly rallied around the idea of me being able to do it, and anyone else being able to do it in my position as well, in terms of play Killer Instinct to the best of of that player's ability. And the community just kind of rallied around it. That player promptly was just like, oh, they didn't actually say anything, I don't think, after that, really. They tried to, I think, briefly argue their point. It was like, I work with these people and they just don't do it. I was like, no, that's not a thing, not an excuse that you can make. You know?
I think that's it. Yeah, that's kind of a kind of persistent problem for a lot of people with disabilities and neurodiversity, is that sort of people removing their agency and being like, oh, I know a person that's that, and they don't do that. It's just like, oh wow, so thank you for speaking for all of us.
Exactly. I mean, that's why I'll even say, when I've done these kinds of things before, like presentations and stuff, I'll always say, I don't speak for everybody. I'm not going to pretend to. What I'm saying is, my personal opinion, my experience, my suggestions, all of that, because I know other people who don't play the same way as me. I know people who prefer to essentially brute force their way through games without any assistance whatsoever where they can. Whereas I'm willing to collaborate and reach out and just say, this is, I need help with this. Can you do these various elements of it for me? But then there are also people who are halfway in between who don't mind at all. If they need to collaborate and they know that, they'll do it. But if they want to try and get as much done as they can. So there's like various schools of thought for it as well.
Oh god, yeah. I mean, like, everybody has different tastes in gaming in general, and that's even before you put on accessibility requirements or anything like that. It's like we all have preferences to what games we like, and that's going to impact kind of what we need, whether you love of being online and playing with other people, or you just go complete hermit and you just like playing like single player. No interaction with nobody.
No interaction with nobody, no how. And that's the thing, right? Even, I mean, to like give my journey in games, as it were, I started many years ago with PC games, really. So PC games like Fighter Pilot, way back when. And it wasn't really that I knew, because this was, when I'm far younger than I am now, of course. And I didn't know how screen readers worked, how any of that worked really at the time. And it was mostly just, it wasn't really that I knew what I was doing. It was mostly just seeing, what happened and just pressing a button and being like, well, what does this do? Probably nosediving a plane into unseen territory. Like literally unseen territory. And then from there, I got an audio-only game by the name of Grizzly, Gulch, Western Extravaganza. What a game that is, from the early 2000s. It's a 4 or 5 key adventure game, if you count the space bar. And essentially you're in this Old West town, the eponymous Old West town of Grizzly Gulch. And you're wandering around doing favors for people, getting involved in gambling, gunfights, and bribery. All great things to learn about from a very young age, apparently. Even learning how to do like blackjack and stuff. Like actual reasonably put together games of blackjack. But that game is very much cheesy, sort of cliche, charming, and kind of its time. But it hasn't actually aged terribly. It's got this sort of like weird cult classic sort of a thing about it. But then, of course, the trouble is a lot of sighted people don't get audio games. That's the thing. A lot of sighted people, when you try and say, oh, play this and use your ears, they're like, what? I don't know where these are coming from. I know they're there, but I don't know what's left, what's right, what isn't, what's in front, what's everywhere.
Yeah, obviously.
What I'm meant to be listening for.
As a deaf, hard of hearing person, obviously the audio games are my natural enemy.
Yeah, totally understandable. And the thing with that is, though, I then got into playing, sort of console games, so PlayStation 1 stuff. So, Street Fighter, what was it? Street Fighter EX Plus. I think it was Plus Alpha in certain regions, depending on where you looked. Tekken 3, that kind of stuff. And that was because, people would play those against me. I wasn't necessarily very good at it, and that was at a time where, move lists weren't readable, of course. The sort of game facts style guides were in their infancy as well. But even then, even if you did know how to read those, decoding it is a whole other matter. And trying to get sighted people who understood what fighting game move lists were meant to be. So it'd be like, I see 2 arrows and a yellow foot. It's like, what does that mean? Whereas, like, I see 2 arrows and a green fist, and it's like, well, this makes no sense.
Well, you have to paint your fist in real life green, and then
oh god, maybe, and then like draw 2 arrows on the floor and just hope it works. But after that, I then, gradually I moved on to, if we fast forward to really my recent stuff. From there, it was really the Xbox One was where I kickstarted my sort of accessibility journey side of it. And I bought Killer Instinct on that. That was the first game I downloaded, even before I got the console, because remember Smart Glass? Remember that? Oh, my word. Let's go back a bit. I downloaded it, I think, like a week prior to getting my console. Just so it was all set up, I downloaded KI, or I'd set it so that I could just get it when I got the console. And of course, this was before narrator existed on the console as well. So I was having to do everything via Smart Glass or like Assistance or Kinect. God.
Kinect's doing so well.
It's doing brilliantly. No, it was great though. It was even being able to say stuff like Xbox play Killer Instinct. Like being able to do that kind of stuff was, pun intended, a game changer. Because before, you'd have to know where all the menus were and hope they made a sound cue and hope the games hadn't suddenly moved for whatever obscure reason and all of that. And this just let me play the games I wanted to when they were in the console or when they were available or whatever.
Yeah.
And then of course comes, the Xbox One, the series, the One S. Getting my consoles run the wrong way. Of course, comes the 1S, then the 1X, then the Series S and X, and of course the PlayStation 4, which was, the first PlayStation console that had text-to-speech, but only in certain regions with certain models because reasons. That was a very strange time. While Xbox had narrator as a thing you could switch on if you knew what to do and you set it to the right regions, with PlayStation 4 you had to have the right model and be in the right region and that kind of thing, which really didn't help.
Yeah.
But needless to say,
they responded to like Scottish accents.
Oh no! Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I never had one of the models that worked with it, so I couldn't have told you. But with PS4, I played a lot of games on that with sighted assistance, much like I did with Xbox's Copilot feature. So I played with. Hold on, just going to get my first prop of the podcast. There we go, the Titan 2 from Console Tuner, a great little adapter. It's got 2 USB ports in the front, got 2 micro USB ports in the back, one on the left-hand side for plugging into a console or platform of choice, and one on the right for the programming port, which is where you plug it into your PC to then do remote stuff with Parsec. But that came a lot later. The point being, you would just plug 2 controllers in, plug it into your console, and use it for that where you didn't have, say, your Copilot feature. So I played stuff like Uncharted, God of War, bits of Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah, I'm obviously for the listeners and that who might not know what co-piloting means, maybe you could explain that to them.
Yeah, of course. So Copilot as a feature is an Xbox platform level feature, and it exists in a form in Windows 10, though I've never actually used it myself. But on Xbox, at the very least, it lets 2 controllers simultaneously act as one. So if I have, say, 2 controllers, can I actually do this? Yay, I can. There we go. Let's say I have 2 controllers, and one person has one and one person has the other. Then one person can be moving forward on one stick, for instance, and then the other person can be turning one left and right to do, the aiming and the other stuff. You can have it be, as simplistic or as complicated as you need it to be in terms of that. And it's all a system-wide thing. So any game that is on Xbox, on, the 1S and the 1X and all of those consoles from the 1 onwards, you can play via Copilot, which is brilliant. So I played Doom Eternal via Copilot. That was hard. I actually, to my credit and the credit of my Copilot off stream, because this was never streamed. And if it were, it would have taken hours, probably. But with that, we beat not only the base game of Doom Eternal, but the Ancient Gods 1 and 2 as well, both the DLCs, which were monumentally difficult in places. beasts, but great fun, great satisfying thing to do. Jedi Fallen Order, played that through when it launched via Copilot. Essentially, if I've ever said on an Xbox game review or a title that I reviewed on Xbox that I did it with sighted assistance, chances are it was with Copilot involved, and that was brilliant. And unfortunately, PlayStation as an ecosystem doesn't have that yet. I want to say the only game that does have it is actually a game I consulted on, which was Horizon Forbidden West for PS5. I'm actually in the credits for that, which is amazing to be able to say because the team at Guerrilla were absolutely lovely.
Yeah, that's an amazing achievement. That's something you should shout about.
Well, the good thing about it is I was able to share play with DB, one of my collaborators in the States.
Oh, cool.
And we played it together via our respective PS5s, and it was like we were playing the same game in the same room. There was no real latency because I don't quite know what wizardry they pull to make it work, but whatever they do, it essentially syncs it up so there's like essentially zero latency as best can be, described. And the best part of it was as well, they patched it later because this feature is only available in that one game. They patched it later so that instead of only the host getting haptics and adaptive triggers, both players would get it. So me and DB on the other side of the world would get adaptive trigger and haptic feedback. So we both really be playing the same game with the same level of information.
Yeah, that's really cool. And
so,
obviously this is pushing and gathering your knowledge, because like I say, you've got a lot of knowledge now from working with developers. Well, no, just from generally playing games, being very responsive to the community and their questions, like we're getting used to that sort of like feedback loop of like explain to people why you need stuff and what you're doing, and then
you just have to you got to just get used to that. Really just got to get used to being able to say I do need these things, and they're like, no you don't. Why did this make the remake cost more? And I'm like, well, they couldn't have added it into the original. And for those of you wondering, yes, I am referring to Last of Us Part 1, which only just launched, and thanks to an early review code I've already platinumed.
All right, show off.
Which no, I was, to be honest, most of it I'd already done myself. Thanks to the accessibility features of the game. The only things I needed help with were, I think, 2 or 3 collectibles and maybe 2 optional conversations, and that was it from the entire 29 trophy list, or 28 trophy list, I guess. And that was all because of the accessibility. I didn't work on that game, but I'm very pleased that it was, the accessibility for part 2 was added into part 1, and then they went further with audio description as well. And I didn't work on part 2 either, in case anybody's curious. No, because people do ask. People do ask. People have asked me. They were like, I forgot, did you consult on this? I'm like, no, I didn't. But I'm always open to consulting on current and future projects with anyone who'll listen.
Yeah.
Really. It doesn't matter if you're indie, whether you're massive scale studio. It really doesn't matter. I will gladly, chat accessibility and see what can be done, because even retrofitting, when I worked with the Coalition on navigation ping escape mode for Gears 5, that was an amazing feature, because that opened up a whole mode that I hadn't been able to play, at least to an extent.
Yeah.
Because I'd needed a sighted person to go through it with me. There's actually a video on my YouTube channel of me and Lily, a lovely person who was able to assist me with escape at launch when we were doing it, and was willing to be recorded showing it off how we ran through it. And the idea was, they would run ahead of me and navigate via, swinging their melee weapons, so like the knife or whatever it is. And they were running through, swinging that, and I was just following that sound cue. And that's not ideal when you're on a time limit, and there's geometry in the way.
Yeah.
But we got it down to a relatively fine art to an extent. But then escape ping comes along, and now I can lead people through it on, the lower difficulty levels. I can lead people through and be like, just follow the sound cues and you should be okay. And I'll call out enemies as we go along. And I've actually led, a fellow gamer without sight through it start to finish on one of the levels, and we've actually managed to do it on stream as well. And being able to have that level of agency is brilliant.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, when people say, this video games can't be done. I just love showing people stuff like that, or Last of Us Part 2, Part 1. Any game that has accessibility and that I've used, even Uncharted 4, where I needed so much sighted assistance, but I could do the combat reasonably well.
Yeah.
I could aim, snap, shoot, get a headshot or whatever most of the time. And, being able to show all of that and be like, this is where video games have come from and this is where they're going.
Yeah.
Is always fun.
But yeah, that's the cool thing about the accessibility work of it all. Like, it's opening up more and more games for yourself, for like myself, for the community, like to
everyone,
play, everybody. Yeah, and it's kind of like that's kind of the golden thing with accessibility is like we should be able to play any sort of genre of game that we want. It shouldn't be restricted to you've got audio games. Play only
fighting games.
Yeah,
it's like that's the other stereotype that I've enjoyed kind of breaking in its own way. As much as I'm a big Killer Instinct fan, I don't mind Mortal Kombat, I don't mind Injustice. The fact of the matter is, I enjoy a good, single player action thing. God of War, absolutely loved platinuming that game with the assistance of Janissary from the States. And that, like, the minimal sighted assistance needed for the optional boss fights. Yes, I beat all the Valkyries.
All right, show off. I still got the last one. I was like, I give up.
I don't blame you. I mean, it's tough, but I enjoy that kind of game where you're learning as you play. So it's like, oh, that attack's blockable. I can, block these two things, block these other two things, and dodge, and then counter. I enjoy that flow of combat, and I don't mind, puzzle games. I'll give anything a try.
Well, that's an interesting question then, because from when you were younger and just getting into games to now, like, do you feel like your taste in games has changed? Do you have a preference to play, like you said, grandiose, like, adventure games of like Uncharted style, or do you still have the like, I'll still play fighting games if that's on the option?
I do still. I mean, I played Killer Instinct not too long ago with Dukesy, a fellow gamer without sight from the UK. And the fun part about that is, where he and I have played together so long, it's actually a really good competition because we both know what we're doing. And it's like, we're both competent enough players where, we'll just stand there and kind of taunt each other, like sort of, friendly rivalry talk over the mic, and just be like, come on, you want to hit me? Come on. And he makes a move and I counter, or I make a move and he counters. And that's always fun. But I feel like I've enjoyed collaborating with people, where I can. So Sea of Thieves is a prime example. Without my crew, or regular crew, and so many other individuals who've helped me over the years, I wouldn't be pirate legend. So the highest sort of rank in Sea of Thieves you can be, pretty much, other than the highest acknowledged rank, let's say, because there's an achievement for it. And I am a trophy hunter as well. That's what I do where I can. I enjoy the, you beat a thing and there's a ring and it's like, woo, trophy. Or you accidentally do stuff and it's like, trophy pops up and you're like, oh, that's a trophy. Okay, fine, cool. And, but
dopamine hit. You're just like, oh yes.
Get in. And that's fun as well. But unfortunately, there's so few games that I can still do it with. Even with Last of Us Part 2, Part 1, I still needed sighted assistance to get those platinum trophies. And it's just by virtue of you have to be, say, in a very specific place, or you have to look at a very specific object in the open world to get it to trigger, or you have to go completely off the golden path of story progression to then find whatever it is you're looking for. And it's like, oh, that's a shame. But we've seen a huge evolution in accessibility. But I'll always have a soft spot for fighting games, I think, deep down. But not in a competitive setting, I don't think. Just in a sort of casual, like,
Well, that's the true question, because you haven't even given us why you have the gamer tag of SightlessKombat.
Well, mostly, it was originally going to be something different, and then it had to be one letter less because of a character limit on a website. Can't think which one it was, so I had to change it. But the good thing is it stands out well. I am sightless. I play fighting games. Back then it was just fighting games, but also as well I enjoy the combat style of stuff. So, your Uncharted, your God of War. It kind of tied in later, like retroactively almost. But it doesn't. The point is, I'm playing video games as a gamer without sight. It doesn't matter what I'm playing, whether I'm trying out, Hades, whether I'm trying out Rhythm Quest, whether I'm trying out, Lost and Hound, or whatever other game happens to be at the time that either I've bought or I've got a review code for or is interesting and there's a demo out for, I'll give it a go. And, that's the thing. It's a matter of, I enjoy, I think it's just where I had that deep-rooted connection to fighting games back then. I just thought, why not? In answer to that question.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's one of those things that's just like, well, it's the clue is in the name.
that too. But a lot of people, I almost enjoy the unintended icebreaker where people come in and say, hey, you're a big Mortal Kombat fan. I'm like, kind of, but I'm more of a KI person. And they're like, why? And then I can go and be like, because KI is the more accessible game in my opinion, and explain why and all of that. And it's a more enjoyable game for me personally. But yeah, I enjoy games that I can play under my own volition. So, Last of Us Part 1, during review, I played 15 hours over the course of a couple of days or a few days, beat the game, thoroughly enjoyed it. Same with Last of Us Part 2, when that launched, I played through that during review and just sat there for hours just plugging away at it because I could do it without having to, go just go and ask somebody, can you come in and help with this, please? I'm stuck at this door and I don't know what to do. And then it turns out all you needed to do was go a couple of feet away, pick up a thing on the ground and plug it in. It's like, really? So I enjoy games that I can access myself, even with limitations. So Sea of Thieves, I need a crew. Gears 5, I don't need a team, but it's better with a team in Gears 5 with Horde and and Escape.
Yeah, I do love the point of that sort of like being able to just get absorbed into the game, and then hours and hours go by, you don't even realize it, and that's a part of, I guess, of gaming culture. I've been like absorbed in the game and like really loving it and playing it. And then, and like you said, like being able to do that without hitting a wall like every 10 minutes because it's not accessible.
Well, less sometimes. If the game's menus aren't accessible, then you're stuck already. So like when I played Destiny 2 at launch, that had cursor-based menus. I believe it still does. And or any game that has cursor-based menus, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter whether. I just thought of that example off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But the point being, I'm stuck in a menu where I can't do anything because there's no, way for me to tell where my cursor is on the screen, and there's no way for me to tell where the options are, what the options are, because there's no menu or UI narration in a lot of games. And, so that's an accessibility blocker in itself. You can't even start the game sometimes.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
being able to then just navigate through the menus. So I load up, even with stuff like Gears Tactics, I load that up. I can read through the menus. I can adjust my settings. Can't play the game, unfortunately, but I can at least set my settings up correctly. And so there's games where the menus are accessible but the game isn't, and there's games that are accessible where the game is and the menus aren't. Sometimes, rarely, but sometimes there are elements of that. And there's
sorry, if you don't mind me asking, I think a lot of people will be curious because he's talking a lot about accessibility in gaming, but it's that sort of like, well, why gaming? Why has games been important to you? Is it just something that's kind of like came across your desk like, I'm going to try this out when you were younger, or just or is it a case of actually you were encouraged to try gaming?
I guess I kind of just grew up with it. As I said, I started pretty young in terms of Fighter Pilot and other unusual obscure games that completely escape me at the minute. But the point being, it's kind of around me for a long time, and I just kind of went with it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't I'm going to try gaming. It was very much just I'll give this a go, see what happens. And that's not the same thing. I didn't overtly decide, gaming's what I'm going to do today. I was just like, if I heard the sound of a game, I was like, that sounds interesting. I'll give that a look, see what that is. And, kind of went from there. And even now, I'll go onto YouTube. I'll see the ads for, I don't know, Forspoken or like the next World of Warcraft thing, and I'm like, "Ooh, that looks cool." It's like that guy just punched that other dude in the face. Ow! And that's all just from sound design. And it's I enjoy. We're saying about why I enjoy. I enjoy games with impact, and like if they've got combat systems, I enjoy it where there's weight to it. So like when if you're playing as Joel in Last of Us Part 1, you've got the real weight of any like melee encounters that you get into, and it's like, oh god, that's painful. Ow! Or God of War when you're in fights and you accidentally get a parry. It's like, yay, that's fun. And I think a lot of that just comes from I've tried stuff and I've enjoyed it. So God of War I played at Guerrilla Games a few years ago. I played that, Uncharted 4 and Horizon Zero Dawn when I was there, having never played any of those before. But I'd seen maybe footage. I don't know if I'd seen footage of God of War before I went, but I certainly looked it up afterwards because I was like, have you got the new God of War? Because I'd heard so much about it. And they were like, yeah. and I thought, oh, can I give it a go? And they were like, yeah, sure, we can set it up. And I played it. And I was like, I have never played anything like this. And I think that's really where my enjoyment comes from. Not just familiarity. So Last of Us Part 1 feeling to extents like Part 2 in familiarity with, navigation and traversal, but feeling different in the sense of, Part 1 plays differently because you've got no dodge, you've got no prone, you are just a walking powerhouse essentially. And even that feels different enough. And if you say to me, oh, they're doing a mod for Gothic 1 and 2, they're looking to mod those, I'm like, I've never tried a Gothic game, but I've heard they're meant to be quite good. And so I'll give those a shot. Or if people say to me, have you played XYZ? Because I've played XYZ and it's actually okay. And I'm like, no, I haven't, but thanks for the recommendation. I'll go and look up some gameplay and see what it is. But I think gaming's important to me because it's such a big cultural touch point. It really is. Like, I remember people who used to advise, like they said, oh, I killed this boss in World of Warcraft. And I'm like, I would love to join you, but I didn't know what accessibility was then.
Yeah.
But I knew, I don't know if I'll be able to play it. Or, whatever. And they'd say, oh, do you want to play this game? And I'm like, I don't know how good I'll be at it. That probably wasn't what I said at the time. But the upshot was, it wasn't great for me. I had to, have a lot of assistance. I remember a lot of times where I'd have to be, squished up beside a person on the same couch, kind of, instead of it being, hold on, let me just grab this for the sake of argument. There we go. I got my dual sense here. Instead, so when I tried to play Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, that doesn't have, of course, the PS5 doesn't have Copilot. It didn't have it at the time of recording, at least. With that, you had to then have two people squished together, sort of overlapping fingers, almost, kind of like this. If you can see it, sort of overlapping fingers, trying to get to all the various controls that you needed. And that's a real struggle when you've got to deal with that. Think about like the PS3 controller. If you've ever seen one of those, how small those are. Yeah. Trying to do games like that on a PS3 controller, that's never going to work, is it? Well, not never going to work. It's going to be difficult. And it really was. And that's the thing. That's how you had to kind of, what's that cliche line? Improvise, adapt, overcome.
Well, yeah, like it's not just a point. I would ask you, like, have you always been like a naturally curious person? Like, you have a lot of curiosity and like trying things out, or like you said with the, being more involved in gaming now, you're like, oh, what's that game? I'll try that game out. Like, a lot of people wouldn't really like that. Like, where's that come from?
I think there's also an element of curiosity as well. Like even in, even outside of gaming, I put together my own music for my streams. I compose that all myself. That's a lot of fun when it works. And when it doesn't, I'm like, what am I doing? But even with that, I tried new tech because I had stuff before that I'd used for, my previous stuff when I was on Mixer for my outro there. That sounded great. But I was like, I want to, pun intended, level up my music experience. And, I looked into, all the tech that was available, relatively recently, and the complete control stuff from Native Instruments. And I was like, this is really cool. I like the idea of this. And I'd planned to go out and demo it. I'd planned to go out and demo this keyboard that I'd looked at and sounded interesting. I'd found a music store that was willing to give an accessibility run through, well, in what limited capacity they might have been able to do.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, that Christmas I got a massive long box and opened it up, and the keyboard was there. I was like, oh. So sometimes you try stuff because you want to try stuff. Sometimes you want to try stuff and then you receive it. It's like, oh, okay. Well, like, you're not sure about trying stuff, and then it just suddenly happens.
Right, you're going to try this now.
Yeah, it's like, you have this, now try. But the great thing about that particular one was I tried it, and once I got my head around it, I was like, this is absolutely phenomenal. And if you listen to stuff like, the stuff I use for my intro track for my Sea of Thieves streams now, I created that all on my own with a new library I've got hold of, I invested in.
Yeah.
And the only reason I invested in that was because I'd watched a bunch of demos of it, and I thought, this is the kind of thing I need, and it's on sale. Always a good idea. And I then sat around with it, and within a few hours I was like, this is amazing. And then fast forward a couple of weeks, and I'd figured out how to use a fair amount of it, not like its full potential, but enough. And there was that curiosity of, can I make a Sea of Thieves intro track, and where do I start? And then I kind of went from there. So extends the curiosity side of it, kind of extends beyond that.
Yeah.
Like even once I've played a hurdy-gurdy, and there was a person with one, and I'd never seen one before. I'd heard of it, I'd never seen one.
Yeah.
And I was like, can I have a look? This is the thing I can have a look at. And they were like, yeah, sure. It's, fast forward 5 minutes and I'm playing it. I'm like, this is cool. So yeah, there's definitely an element of that, and an element of, just being interested by other people's recommendations as well.
Yeah.
And because the Complete Control keyboard was recommended to me by other people.
Yeah.
As well. So it's partly me, partly other people, partly popular culture as well. So if a game's big, so Fortnite, Destiny 2, Call of Duty, Warzone, just name a popular game of the last few years. Titanfall 2. I got hold of that, and that was great. That was great fun. Didn't have enough accessibility at all, but I really enjoyed the campaign, and that was only because I'd seen stuff about it, and I thought, yeah, I'll give it a try, see what it's like. And the great thing is as well, my co-pilot really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And that's the other part of it. It's the bonding, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's the bonding side of it. So, even if it's bonding with, people off stream, locally, whether it's online. And actually, I should point out, co-pilot, we mentioned it earlier, that feature is local only. That's the huge thing of it. It's local only. And originally it was marketed as a thing to get your younger relatives into gaming.
Yeah.
I don't know really if Microsoft understood at the time the power of that, in the sense of, I can sit here and play Jedi Fallen Order while a person helps me navigate.
Yeah.
And I can do like 90% of the combat. And that's great. I remember being on the show floor at XO19, and I was this was on, I think it was like a couple, either on Fallen Order's release day or no, it was on the release day. I hadn't really seen much of it, and I thought, this is a Star Wars game. I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I thought, I want to look at this, see what it's like, just have a play. I don't know if I'll get very far in it. Yeah. But the rep on the show floor was brilliant, because that person decided to, they were adamant they wanted to get me into combat. Like, they wanted to get me into an actual fight sequence.
Yeah.
And, once we figured out, how the navigation was going to work, it was fine. I was like, we're not going to, it's quite a long time before you get to actually get into a combat sequence, really. But the game sounded cool. I was like, this is keeping me intrigued. I like this. So the rep eventually speed ran me, not via like cheats or anything, just, went through it extremely quickly and got me into combat. And he's like, they said, oh, this is how you parry a blaster bolt. It's telling you, press L1 to deflect incoming fire or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so what's the parry window on this? And, given how much God of War I'd played by that point, I was like, or how much I was aware of. I was like, okay, fine, I can parry this.
Yeah.
And within 10 to 15 seconds of me sitting down with the controller and being like, okay, so blaster bolt. Oh, too late on that, and then too early on the next one.
Yeah.
Within 10 to 15 seconds of that, I was managing to hit it, and the rep was just like, yes, this is working. And so it's also the joy of other people seeing me do stuff that I like. Not just that I like, but I enjoy their sort of interest in it. Being able to show people how stuff works from my perspective, whether that's gaming, whether that's music, whether that's 3D printing, and how I know what merchandise looks like. I'm just reaching over with one hand to grab a 3D printed version of the marker from Dead Space.
Yeah.
Because before I played Dead Space, I'd heard of the marker, never known what it looked like, but I played 1 and 2, really enjoyed it, and 3D printed this lovely large 6-inch tall representation of the marker, and it's even got tactile marker runes on the bottom of it. And that knowing having that access to the world in physical merch is brilliant as well. So there's so many things that aren't just the games that you can enjoy about it.
No, it's like it's an interesting point bringing up like the 3D printing of it all, because it's like you said, like using tech in a way that the inventors never intended, and it's kind of like,
well, no, they did intend it, because of course there's 3D model files, there's all sorts of stuff, there's people making figures, so I guess it was always intended, really.
But I guess in my perspective it was like, I don't think they really intended like, this actually allows you to access the game, through touch.
Oh, no.
Realizing like that. I don't think a lot of 3D printers would have realized, actually, no, you can, literally show you what the hell is actually in the game.
or a lot of game developers. I don't think a lot of game developers realize the power of that. Because even when I've brought it up to clients before, there's been a sense of, oh, wow, really? Or a sense of, I don't know whether we can release those assets, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because if you could, with restrictions of some kind, not limitations per se, but not like limitations to the model, but maybe how you own it or how you print it, or whatever, something straightforward. But if developers understood that, I feel like that would be an even further along sort of avenue as well. Because for those that can't see, I have on the wall behind me so many figures, pop vinyls, pieces of merch. I've got a gold replica Gears of War 4 Lancer kicking around. I've got, I wouldn't even know where to carry on listing stuff. I've got cable guys. I've got all sorts of things. And most of that is because I want to know what stuff looks like. Even we mentioned Doom Eternal earlier. I might as well show this one off. The Cacodemon from Doom Eternal. I'd taken out so many of these while playing Doom Eternal, had no idea what they looked like, and found this print. And I was like, you know what, go on, we'll print it and see what it comes out like. And I would never have told you, I'd never have been able to tell you that it looked like this, with all the teeth and the pointy horns. They are genuinely pointy. Put my hand down when I printed it to try and pick it up, and
ow, you're sharper than I realised.
It's like, ow, that is pointy. Well, I say I printed it. I've had assistants to do all of my 3D printing. And that's the other side of it. I'm lucky, I'm fortunate to have that assistance, whether it's from people like DB, Jenna, my crew in Sea of Thieves, off stream locally. I am very fortunate enough to know that, but I'm aware of that. So I know that not everybody's going to have that ability to get assistance at a relative moment's notice. So, that's why I push so hard for, what was loosely termed in a recent conversation as the solo option. It might not seem like I do with all the work I do with collaborations and, crews and everything, but I genuinely want to be able to play as much of the games as I can myself without needing anybody else's help. If it's a team game, that still means I want to be able to independently go over to, I don't know, say I need to find my way to a barrel of cannonballs downstairs in the ship in Sea of Thieves, and then come back to the cannon all on my own because the rest of the team are away fighting skellies on the island. I don't know. I want to be able to turn around, walk downstairs, know where the barrel is, grab the cannonballs out of it, come back up, fire at the nearest ship that's coming in because they're being annoying. I don't know. So I want to be able to do that all under my own power, and I think that's really the key thing. Accessibility is about giving people their own agency and their own ability to access the game. Doesn't matter if you've got full vision, you've got no vision. Doesn't matter how much what disabilities you've got. Whether it's temporary. So say I want to do an encounter in Last of Us 2 while I'm holding a drink in one hand because I'm thirsty. And I want to be able to do all of that on, one stick, one set of triggers, all of that.
Yeah.
That's not an accessibility set of features you would have associated with me having no sight, but disability. I can't remember who said it recently to me, but they'd mentioned a line of "We are all temporarily able-bodied," which is a great way of looking at it in a slightly almost depressing fashion, in a manner of speaking.
Yeah, but it rings so true because a lot of situational things happen, environmental, aging. A lot of us are getting older. Things will start falling off.
And I think the fun part for me though, in a strange way, is when people come back and say to me, "Oh, I couldn't game without sight. I don't ever want to. If I woke up tomorrow morning and I had no sight, I wouldn't want to game." I'm like, surely you would though. Surely you would want to keep doing the thing that you've been doing for, goodness knows how many years in a particular instance. And the accessibility features that are in these games, Forza Horizon 5, Minecraft Dungeons, all of Horizon Forbidden West, Uncharted 4, or any game with accessibility features. Spider-Man Miles Morales, the remastered edition on PS5, all of that stuff. PC games, Hearthstone with the Hearthstone Access mod. All sorts of games. You want to be able to enjoy those still, and ideally, of course, you shouldn't have to rely on mods or the community to make things accessible. But sometimes it just happens as well, and it should be embraced by the developers.
Yeah, exactly.
But those efforts can lead to amazing things. Like, Hearthstone, I was able to, stream for ages. I had a couple of people come in and say, "Oh, hey, do you want a match?" And just because the mod, makes it accessible, I was able to say, "Yeah, sure, give me a couple of minutes while I finish this one." And then we had an extra, 2, 3, 4 matches on stream. And it was all because, I could go into the social tab and, do all the invites and whatnot and challenge everybody. And, without that mod, I wouldn't have been able to get into the game, let alone, set it all up. And, Hades, there's all sorts I could list, I could go on for hours about this. But, modding is an interesting thing because as much as it might seem like a get out of jail free card or get out of accessibility free card, I guess, for developers, it's not a crutch to be relied on.
Well, I think,
guess you could
I always see it as a positive because yes, it's enabling people to play, but also it's really showing developers the value in just having that in their game anyway, or planning for that, because they can see just how many people are interacting with it, how many players rely on it, what they get out of it, and it's like proof in the pudding sort of thing. Like, hey, look
it's
at
like
the community.
If you'd have done this, if you'd have done this before, just this is what would have happened, but bigger.
Oh god, yeah, exactly.
Kind of. But I definitely feel like a lot of people don't get, that they're probably going to be disabled at some point, somehow, somewhere, and the fact of the matter is,
don't consider that. That's coming for you.
No. We'll retake that. We'll retake that. It's fine. I think the thing is really though that people, are, a lot of people will be disabled at some point, throughout their lives. It's a thing that just happens, doesn't it? As you say, as people get older, as people, in like have medical conditions or whatever. You know, stuff will happen that will mean that they can't possibly game the way they used to, and that includes people losing their vision and people fully losing their vision. And that's the thing, the acceptance that gamers without sight exist and the willingness to understand how gaming works from that point of view is why I keep doing what I do, because I want to make sure people know that it is possible, how it's possible, what games is possible with, and that, you know, it's not just going to stop here with one, you know, or a few games done. There's going to be more progress.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of a nice, I've got a nice last question then for like this like section of the podcast. And that's kind of like, what do you hope then for like, whether that's in your future or the community's future with gaming? Because now that you're in this role at RNIB as a research officer, isn't it?
Yeah, Accessible Gaming and Immersive Technologies Research Officer. Yes, it's far too long a title.
Fancy title. Fancy title is what you say.
Yes, it is a fancy title, yes.
What, I mean, you know, that's kind of like, you know, what do you hope to get out of that? You know, what do you hope to get out of working with RNIB?
Well, essentially, the role is, to an extent, you know, when I announced it, I clarified it because people were asking me, you know, what this role is. And essentially what it is, it's just what I was doing before, but with the backing of RNIB. So like, essentially just, you know, consultancy with studios all around the world, presentations, events, streaming, you know, reviews, YouTube content, you know, even content outside of direct gaming stuff maybe as well. So stuff like content creation elements too, collaboration with, you know, other gamers and, you know, working together to promote different perspectives, all sorts of fun things that I already, in a way, you know, have accomplished or do to extent, but with that backing from a large organization. I
do love the fact that, you know, the charity fully embraces the, you know, the gaming aspect of their community, because like, you know, it's I have the privilege of talking to a few of the workers at RNIB, and they talk often about how, you know, the people that they work with in their community and that really just love gaming. they want more gaming. It's always like, we want more, they want more, like, come on.
That's what me and whoever's, you know, working with me or, you know, collaborating with me or who I'm consulting with, any of that, that's what, you know, I'm hoping to hopefully bring to, you know, as many people as possible. You know, if I get the opportunity to consult on, you know, a game that's going to come out in a couple of years' time, let's say, you know, then, you know, I want as many people as possible to be able to play that, and I will push as hard as I can for that within, you know, my remit. And the fact of the matter is, it's a thing that, you know, RNIB have, you know, they've done research on gaming that's, you know, available on request. You know, they've done research that was released earlier this year that shows that, you know, people want more games. You're completely right. But it's not just, you know, it's not only people with disabilities who want games. Everybody wants more games for everybody. Is the best way to possibly summarize it. And I'm just really looking forward to seeing what can be achieved when, you know, when everybody sort of gets together, realizes the importance of accessibility and starts saying, hey, look, we want to make our stuff accessible. Can you help? And I'm like, yeah, of course, I'll be glad to. So,
that's a good shout out to any developers not listening, is to like reach out. Like, you know, SK is more than happy to like, you know, start chatting and, you know, saying
indeed,
how they can help.
Yeah, I'm hopefully, you know, I'm hoping that will happen more frequently now as well, even than it did before. You know, and that's the great thing about this role, the fact that, you know, that I can, you know, not only can I go to people, but of course then, you know, developers, if you want to reach out, feel free. I mean, that was always open as an invitation, but now it's kind of a bigger extent of that. You know, we want to promote, we want to, you know, share accessibility. Want to make sure that people know what's going on. You know, even the stream I did last week, you know, that was to showcase The Last of Us Part 1 before launch. You know, if you say you're a developer and you send me a small indie game that's fully playable, you know, even if it only takes 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, to get through the whole thing, I will gladly sit down and show it off on stream and say, you know, this is a new accessible release. Go and buy this on, you know, whatever, or go and, you know, get hold of this, have a try of it. You know, I will gladly promote that. you know,
Yeah.
whether I'm you know, working on, you know, on behalf of the RNIB at that point, or whether I'm, you know, on a weekend just doing personal stuff, I will gladly promote, you know, whatever interesting accessibility projects I find and what I'm working with.
And that's
So
how,
yeah,
that's I always
yeah.
say, like, obviously working, in sort of developer side, I always say, the power, like the pure power of word of mouth in the disabled community, like of saying, hey, I've tried this game, it's fucking awesome because it's accessible, as I can just play it and I have no issues. And that's so strong, and so for another person to go, oh, maybe I'll be able to play it through now as well, and it just spreads like wildfire.
Oh, exactly. And I mean, even with Rhythm Quest's recent demo, I downloaded that. I'd seen a few comments on how to get it running. I poked around with the demo for a while before I tried to record it to try and just make sure it was going to work. Got it working as intended. Loaded up my recording software and everything, set everything up. Intended to just play a couple of levels, and then played through the entire level, like the entire demo, in one go, on one video. And I was like, "This is great. Definitely gonna have to keep an eye out for this." And the best part of it was, I then put that video out and signal boosted it to a few people. And there were people coming back and saying to me, oh, you know, I would love to play this. And, you know, I was asking, is this the first time you'd heard of this, just out of curiosity?
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, it is. Your video is the first time I'm hearing of it. I'm like, glad I could help. So, you know, even just one video. And I mean, I will say as well, I edit those videos together myself with, you know, very minimal amounts of sighted assistance just to visually check it as I go through. So I try and do as much of the work as I can on my own.
Yeah.
Well, not on my own, but like myself, you know, with the agency that I have.
Yeah.
And, you know, being able to put those videos out and say to people, here's this accessible game. Don't just read about it, play it. Or not, or don't just like read about it. You can watch it here and then go and play the demo if you like it. Or, you know, a game showing, you know, how a video showing how I play, you know, Last of Us Part 2, the combat with that, or Killer Instinct. I did a couple of different demos for that, or, you know, Gears of War 4's Horde mode, you know, showing how I did that, and, you know, showing all the different memorization stuff. All of that is great to be able to show off, because a lot of the times it's, you know, there are people who say, you know, they'll say, oh, I'm a blind gamer, and then you figure out that they have, you know, that you're aware they have sight, and that's a different thing. As I said, you know, legal blindness is often just shortened to being blind. So, you know, that's why I say I'm a gamer without sight, and that's how I demonstrate stuff, because you know, I'm showing it from, you know, if you have no sight, will you be able to play this?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what I enjoy giving people, the answer of, yeah, you'll be able to play this. You know, it might take a little setting up, but once you've done it, then you're good. Or, you know, no setup at all. It like ideally. So, you know, being able to showcase that is fantastic.
And that's the thing though. That's sort of, you know, a service, like, you know, for it is, like, you know, to be able to people to be, you know, alleviate that fear of like, oh, you know, if I buy this, can I play it, sort of thing, and like, you know, to be able for you to be able to go, hey, I've literally just done a showcase demonstrating that me as a gamer without sight can play it, so you'll be absolutely fine as well. Like, obviously with my recommendations, or like, you know, you might need blah 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 with this, but it's great that you know you are that person now.
I mean, I know there are other people who do fantastic work in that space as well.
Yeah.
Because of course, you know, like sight loss, vision loss, visual impairment, however you want to refer to it, is a spectrum.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, people like Steve Saylor doing work for, you know, gamers who have residual vision to work with. You know, Brandon Cole as well, and, you know, so many other creators all around the world. Those are just the two names I could think of off the top of my head. You know, so many other creators doing work in various areas of it, and not just for, you know, gaming without sight either, just or gaming with varying levels of visual impairment, but with, you know, other disabilities as well. So sometimes it's good for me to happen to see a video from, say, a person who's deaf or hard of hearing, where I can then say, you know, oh, this game, you know, you're using these options. That's good to know. That has it. Does it also have any accessibility for, you know, gamers without sight? You know, say it's a full price new release, and I've not been able to, you know, contact the developers to ask about, you know, looking through it or anything. Then, you know, sometimes you'll get assistance from the community there, or they'll recommend and say, I've had a great time with this, playing this with whatever my disability is. You'd like it as well because it's this kind of thing, or it's got these features. I'm like, I'll have to give that a look later. So, and then I go off and download it and I'm like, yeah, it works, that's cool. Or I'm like, oh, this actually doesn't work, but it's a really cool idea. Maybe the developers will look into it. So that conversation is, there's no singular line of conversation. It's usually people talking to each other about the games and swapping notes and giving ideas, or saying, if only this were playable. So
that's great. It's I'm gonna say we're a lot longer than we usually do this, but I don't mind. It's my podcast. I can do what I want. But it's nice to move into the last section of the podcast, which is talking about the games that have probably had the biggest impact for yourself. And I always say what your sort of what the golden sort of gaming moment for you is. And I'm sure you probably have a lot. But if I said to you, if you was one, I was describe gaming, what would you go for?
I'll choose a couple. So I'll choose a couple just in short bursts. So Pirate Legend and Sea of Thieves, that was great because that was alongside a fellow gamer without sight as well, who was a big Sea of Thieves player and still is when possible. The best part of it was I thought I was going to get it, and I didn't know there was any element of friendly rivalry at all there. And then I get a message out of the blue saying, "Oh, hey, I'm now halfway through my levels for this faction," and I was like, "Wait, how have you managed?" And the upshot was the Golden Glory weekend had elevated, the leveling for that player to amazing heights. Shasters, who's the player in question, she sort of power leveled through it in the best way possible, and I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." So it ended up being we pushed each other almost in a sort of casual competition kind of way to see who would get it first.
Yeah.
And over the course of a week, maybe slightly longer, we were just calling in favors from old friends and crews we hadn't sailed with in years, or new crews that we'd put together just for that. And eventually I got it one day, and the next day Shay got it as well, which was absolutely brilliant, because then I was, the good thing was we both knew that we would, there wouldn't just be one Pirate Legend without sight on the Sea of Thieves, there would be two. And that's that's even better.
Yeah.
So that was a fantastic one. That was brilliant. In terms of recent stuff, Last of Us Part 1, being able to play through the entire thing, start to finish, after waiting 9 years after everybody else, pretty much. Because I needed sighted assistance to get through even anything of the remastered version on PS4.
Yeah.
But didn't really get anywhere with it, unfortunately.
Oh, that's the thing that, obviously a lot of Discord,
9 years.
Discord on Twitter or whatever, or social media.
I know.
And it's kind of like, well, that's the value. That's the reason why this, the game was needed, and why it needed the, the whole rework of it.
Exactly. Yes.
Because people are playing it for the first time. Yes, it's a 9-year-old game, but actually, it's not for a lot of people. It's a brand new game.
It's a brand new ability to experience it. That was the thing when it released. It was unable to be experienced by so many people, myself included. Even though I was aware of it through pop culture, through YouTubers, through everything else, I wasn't able to join in with that. And now I was able to enjoy it. Alongside everybody else. With review codes and everything. I played it before everybody else, but then to disseminate to people and say this is playable. There are a few issues here and there as of the time of recording, but you can do it. You can play through the entire game on your own without needing assistance is great. So that was good. I'll give you a couple more. Gears 5, when I've been running with Gamers Without Sight, a recent one, I had me and I think it was me and 3 other Gamers Without Sight, or with varying levels of visual impairment, and 1 bot. So we had 1 AI teammate, which is fine. That happens. That's good. It kind of helps sometimes. But we all got through an entire 20-wave match of Horde on stream. and then we did it like a second time.
Wow.
It's like and that was all because of the accessibility and because we were communicating well.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's just gonna blow people's minds. Like, as daft as it sounds, it's one of those like, what do you mean a bunch of blind people were managed to like a blind team did what?
And if you ever want to see that, let me know, and we can set up a stream to show that off, because it's a lot of fun, especially when you're all calling well enough and it all works really well. But that's a great one, and of course I can't go without mentioning God of War, beating Sigrun. So Sigrun being the true final boss, as I like to call her, at least, of God of War, the optional final boss. I've beaten her not once but twice. Once on the normal game and once on New Game Plus very recently, thanks to the assistance of Janissary, which was brilliant. And DB and I actually did Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West, kind of almost sort of back to back as well. So
yeah.
I've played through a lot of these big series just because of the local, like the sort of online sighted assistance I can get. So those are a few great moments. I could probably tell you a bunch of other stories, but with of course I understand time is not on our side. But if you ever want to hear a bunch of these anecdotes in full, then do come along and ask. I'll give my socials and stuff at the end. But
yeah. But yeah, no, like it's it's one of those things. Like it's one of those, again, that reiterate how stupidly like good it is for disabled, neurodiverse people to be able to just be a part of like gaming culture as well, because like it's like the hype. Yeah, the hype, and that's that's a part of games. It's a part of being a part of the experience of being able to have like trailers with either subtitles, audio description, all the bells and whistles that makes it able for us to be able to get excited about upcoming releases and knowing about what accessibility features are coming in, because obviously I'm guessing you'll be very excited for the next God of War coming out soon.
I was just gonna say.
But like in fact, that's part of like that's why the marketing team has to pay attention to accessibility as well. Like it's the whole
marketing team and anybody who works with that works with that game as coverage. So I was looking at a news outlet that shall remain nameless, who were covering the game, and essentially there were elements of their content that I'd seen that weren't actually accessible, either at all or had limited accessibility in terms of what it was actually providing, which was a real shame. But hopefully that can be resolved. But the point being, I was going to mention God of War because that would be the next game that I'm really, really excited for, because there's speculation it might be fully playable. We're not sure because of the limited information that was released in May for Global Accessibility Awareness Day. But all those features coming together make it seem like it might be 100% doable from start to finish, at least the main narrative. We don't know how any of it's going to work in terms of like optional stuff, optional elements or anything like that. I hope as a big fan of side content and stuff, that I can go through and do any of the optional boss fights and things, because they were saying about optional territories, they were saying about things like that. I'd be up for doing any and all of that. And I did say if it's possible, I did say I will at some point do a playthrough on the hardest difficulty level to really push myself.
Meanwhile, I'm setting it back down to easy, because I'm just like, oh god, I remember when the Valkyries were like, I'm gonna make this easy on myself.
That's the point. No, what I do. Here's the secret to that. What I do is I have two playthroughs running at once. So I have one running on easy if I just want to get rid of any pent up aggression from the really ultra super hard playthrough, where I'm just like, right, I've done enough hitting of you with that one attack that doesn't land. I'm just going to go down to easy, where it actually connects consistently. But yeah, I'm super excited about Ragnarok, because if that game is fully accessible, then or even partially, like even if I can just go through it and play through the game, and do well at it under my own power, I will be so pleased, because really the amount of assistance I needed wasn't a lot. It was mostly just navigation and inventory management, really, if we want to boil it down. And and make like and by navigation I mean puzzles and stuff as well. But if I can do those things, then the combat hopefully should just fall into place. And because and I just want people to be able to do the same stuff as me. Like if you and I can go into Ragnarok or come out of Ragnarok and say, oh, how did you find this boss fight at this point? And you're like, oh, I found it really easy. And I'm like, oh, I just couldn't dodge that one thing that it kept doing. Or the other way around, you're like, oh, the subtitles were really good. On an accessibility standpoint, you can be like, oh, the subtitles are great. And I'm like, the haptic feedback when this one giant element thing happens. All of that, being able to swap notes with people and say, this thing works really well for me, that thing's amazing. Or even just being able to go on stream and be like, can I, how much health has this boss got left? Oh, it's like down to 1 bar. Come on, I've got this. Oh, you hit me out of that, really? And not having to have a sighted player say, oh, you got the person down to 1 bar. It's like, oh. Whereas it's 1 bar, come on, 1 bar, I had you there. It's not just agency in playing the game, it's agency in experiencing the game as well.
No, I think that's
is a good way to term it.
No, I like that, and that's it's kind of a good way to sort of end this. Like that's like you say, it's agency and experience. We want to experience the games in their fullest, and that's everything around it. The game themselves, outside the game, with other people, with everything. So
books, merch, toys, trailers, collectible pin badges. I don't know.
That's where we go to the people working on God of War Ragnarok. It's like, hey, review code, wink. Also, reviews merch, wink.
also all the things, all the merch. No.
That influencer swag bag that you do, wink.
I mean, the good thing about it is, rest assured, I will cover God of War Ragnarok as soon as I get the chance.
Yeah.
And I am.
Well, that's a good lead-in to sharing your socials.
And you will find.
Yeah. How can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Twitch, and on YouTube as SightlessKombat, SightlessKombat, and you can find my website at www.sightlesskombat.com as well, where all my reviews and things live, my written reviews and other content as well, including the Transcribing Games project, which is at transcribinggames.sightlesskombat.com. With capital T and capital G on Transcribing Games. That is a community-driven audio description effort, which actually started really with the original 2018 God of War. But it goes deeper than just audio describing edits of video game footage, though. It goes through things like, descriptions of the environments, weapon descriptions, transcripts of the cutscenes, enemy descriptions, all sorts of stuff. As well, that project, and there are equivalent videos as well. The God of War ones being voiced by the wonderful Janissary, who played through the game with me too, which was amazing to do. It's great to do. She played through it with me as well.
Definitely a lot to check out then.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of content there, and there will likely be, as more games become more accessible, a lot more coming. And on Twitch, my streams are hosted on. The Sightless Story streams are hosted by the Xbox Ambassadors channel, as well as I am an Xbox Ambassador, play host, community champion, and MVP. I've got the award behind me on the wall. But I don't just play that. I do play. I play Xbox stuff. I play PC stuff. I play PlayStation stuff, and I'm holding up a Firefly pendant that I 3D printed from The Last of Us. And if I flip it around, those of you that can see will see it says "Look for the light" on the back of it. Kind of ironic me holding that up, given I can't see anything in the first place. But yeah, with that, we will end off here, and you can find me in those places. Feel free to drop me a private message on Twitter. I'm on Discord as well. I have my own Discord server that you will see me promote throughout my streams. Feel free to join there if you want to suggest games you want to see me play, all of that as well. But as I say, come along to my streams and you'll be able to find most of the information there.
Definitely.
And interact with me firsthand. and say hi and ask questions.
I'm going to say for the listeners / viewers, we always put the link to all the socials and everything that SK has shared in the description to make it easily accessible and findable for you.
Yeah, of course.
So thank you again. Like, this has been a nice bumper edition of DNA of Games, but
I apologize for taking far too much of your time.
It's more like
I'm too much. That is my job.
It's good. That's the thing. Like, it's so nice to talk to people that are so passionate about gaming, and that's the whole point of this podcast, is to find people that just happen to be disabled or whatever, but are truly like gamers at heart, working games, doing all that, and that's why I enjoy doing this. And thank you for like sharing your story and sharing that your passion of games. And I, like I say, I'm very excited to see where your work takes you in the future. And I always think that you'll be doing more, and hence why people should be following you on Twitch,
and on Twitter as well, and on Twitter and on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss any notifications.
That's what I meant to say. My channel.
Well, both of our YouTube channels then. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I've really thoroughly enjoyed sharing these stories with you. It's great fun. I always enjoy chatting games and accessibility to anybody who'll listen, so I really, really appreciate it. And who knows, in a future episode we could cover how God of War Ragnarok actually went.
Exactly. I was gonna say, I'm sure you've got plenty of more stories that you could share for even another entire episode. You never know. Keep an eye on the podcast. Like
the time I beat Ken Lobb at Killer Instinct, not once but twice. There's a good story, but we'll keep that one for a future one. But thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
thoroughly appreciate it.
Thank you, SK. And for listeners, keep listening. Obviously, keep listening, listeners.
What else are you gonna do?
Keep following DNA of Games, because there'll be more people who are disabled or neurodiverse working in games, and whether that's developers or content creators and people just generally gaming professionals, sharing their stories and how they got into games and why they love games. And hopefully you'll see you again next week.
And all that remains for me to say is I've been SightlessKombat. Have a great rest of your day, whatever time it is in your part of the world, whatever time it is where you are. Stay safe, take care, and look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.
Subscribing wherever you may be watching or listening this to. And then following wherever you are. We are meeting each week.